Hi everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Theory Debunk, and guess whose new bachelor pad this is? That's right, I finally got a mortgage. Time to celebrate. Oh look everyone, Blue found a fun new theory for us to debunk. Well, let me just take a quick look-see and... You know, you were a lot nicer when I was a kid. Alex Bale is no stranger to this channel. Some of you may know him from his Pixar or Cabbage Bender theories we already covered on this channel. Others of you may know him as that guy who started a pizza cult. But most importantly, this theory is about one of my favorite childhood shows. That being the Nick Jr. classic Blue's Clues, as well as the true crime show Law & Order. A show on the other hand that how do I say this? I never really liked it. Yeah, I tried giving this show a shot because it was one of the many true crime shows that was always on the break room TV at work. And that's not to say I can't or haven't enjoyed more mature stories in the past. It's just that one of the main problems I see with cop shows is that they all seem to be just misery porn. And this is coming from a guy who likes to find enjoyment in most media he consumes. Keyword being most, but I'm getting sidetracked, so let's start the debunk. So after it's revealed I accidentally stole Alex's homage for this video, sorry about that by the way Alex, I really should start watching these videos before making the opening, we immediately jump to the first point of this theory, right after this sick opening he made for the theory. Give it a watch.
By far, the most common type of fan theory is the dream theory. Whether they're stuck in a coma, or they're dreaming, or hallucinating, or they're actually dead. And look, I understand the appeal of these types of theories. It's fun to take something innocent from your childhood and give it a dark, edgy plot twist.
Funny, my idea of fun is usually dismantling that way of thinking. But what makes Alex's dream theory special is that it takes into account the Law & Order episode where Steve Burns of Blue's Clues actually made a guest star role. In an episode that Alex thankfully felt the need to play this disclaimer before. Forgive them, Lord. They know now what they did. So the 1995 episode in question, Cruel and Unusual, which doesn't really sound like a synopsis for the episode rather than the entire series. Anyways, Steve plays an autistic man named Kevin, who was sent away by his parents at the tender age of 10 because he couldn't stop hurting himself. And this place just so happened to have a lovely new treatment called electroshock therapy. You know, that thing that's only used today to cure severe depression and not autism. Anyways, the episode decides to end by killing off not Steve with a blood clot for absolutely no reason.
I think the kid's dead.
Hello, this is Dick Wolf. How can I help you? Please stop.
What I find interesting about this is that for years, people have been trying to prove that Steve is actually in prison or a mental facility, and now we have this piece of media where we see Steve's actor in that exact position, and as far as I'm aware, no one's ever really talked about this.
Why yes, Alex, that is very interesting. But here are a couple of things to take note of. Number one, just because an actor plays two different characters, that does not make them the same person. Secondly, why would Kevin forget his own name and start calling himself Steve? That doesn't make any sense. And thirdly, if Steve's character died at the end of the episode, how can it be a dream then if there's no brain activity going on anymore?
Bosky. Analysis. But
if these were enough counterpoints to knock the sense back into you, then let's pull out our handy-dandy debunk book and dive a little deeper, shall we?
We are told by Kevin's parents that he was learning to draw.
Thanks to him, Kevin was learning to draw.
Let's draw a rectangle, and there, cheese.
We are also told that when Kevin harmed himself, he was strapped to a chair.
We're ready to sit in our
thinking chair.
Now that we're in our thinking chair.
And then, when Kevin escaped the facility, he kept asking people what time it was.
What time is it now?
There's a talking clock. And most of all, every day, Steve has mail time.
Now let's tackle these first 3 points one at a time, shall we? First are the drawings. The purpose behind drawing the clues was that it was meant to tie in the childhood development aspects of the show. Because as Alex said, kids love to draw. Now as for the chair, the thinking chair is very different from the torture chair in Law & Order. Not to mention, Steve willingly sits in a chair without any problems. Now, as for the obsession with time, this is a tricky one. As Alex mentions in this video, it's not uncommon for people on the spectrum to rely on some sort of schedule. And believe it or not, as someone who has a bit of autism himself, I can tell you firsthand, I do love me a good routine, and probably explains why this episode bugs me so much. However, I think it's obvious that Steve's quote-unquote schedule is just a means to teach the kids watching good time management skills, especially the most important time of them all.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it comes, I wanna wail.
After Kevin escaped, we are told that he went to a movie theater. And guess what he did in the theater.
Movie started at 10, he was out of here by 10 after 10. Got out of his seat, walked into the screen.
Kevin got out of his seat and tried to walk into the screen. Doesn't that sound exactly like Steve Blue-Skidooing into a picture?
Well, only sort of. The blue skidoo is more like a jump into the picture in question rather than walking into it. And he wasn't just trying to walk through the screen. He was also doing some very surface level and very oversimplified autistic things. Look, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record on this. I'm not blaming Alex, I'm not blaming Steve Burns. I know everyone has to start somewhere. It's just that, again, as someone who's been diagnosed with autism in the past, I get a little peeved whenever I see stuff like this. I mean, who even sponsored this episode? Oh, that makes sense.
Kevin's behavioral clinic is in New York City, and the one-time characters actually leave the Blue's Clues fantasy world and go to the real world, they end up in New York.
That can't possibly count. That movie is about new guy Josh coming to the city with Blue. Steve is already living in the city as a detective, ironically enough. In fact, this brings up another good point. We've had not one, but two other hosts come in after Steve. So how can it be his delusion if it goes on without him?
So, in the very first episode of Blue's Clues, we can see a newspaper from the New York Times inside of Steve's house, strongly implying that's actually where he lives. We can also see objects from Blue's Clues in Kevin's life.
Well, seeing as they had to get there via flying bus, I sincerely doubt that's the case. Also, those objects Alex mentions can literally be found in everyone's everyday life. Salt and pepper shakers, buckets, clocks. Heck, even the blue bus Steve goes on for college can literally be any blue bus. And going back to what I said before about Joe and Josh, Alex does mention that Kevin has a brother just like Steve. However, his name's not Joe. This random guy over here is Joe. And again, why would Kevin confuse the names? There's also this guy named Josh in the episode, but unlike the Josh in Blue's Clues, he's not anyone's cousin, so I don't know where he became that from. And this is the part of the video where I feel like we're really stretching for points.
Kevin is also the name of the Blue's Clues UK host.
Hello out there, it's me, Kevin.
Now come on guys, they're obviously not meant to be the same person.
Kevin's behavioral clinic has the same initials as Blue's Clues.
So does the term before Christ. How is that proved? Oh, let's just skip to the end.
Kevin's doctor explained to the detectives why Kevin harmed himself. It's frustrations because of his inability to communicate. Now, autism is a spectrum, and it's a lot more complicated and nuanced than the way TV shows like this tend to portray it. But it is true that some people with autism have varying levels of difficulty communicating. And I think this becomes interesting when we take a look at what Blue's Clues actually is.
Great idea. We'll play Blue's Clues to figure out what story Blue wants us to tell.
It's a game where you try to understand Blue, a character who has an inability to communicate.
Okay, Alex, let me tell you something about your smoking gun here. Come closer. A little closer. Don't be shy. I'm not gonna hurt you. Thing is, even in the Blue's Clues world, dogs can't talk. So of course, you're just gonna want to play Blue's Clues instead. Or, you know, just go. Thing is, no matter how you slice it, it's obvious that Blue's Clues is meant to be a fantasy world that's anything but realistic. And this fakeness that Alex mentions in the video is simply due to the budget limitations in the early days. But there you have it, why Blue's Clues is not related to Law & Order. Now if you excuse me, I need to go make dinner in my brand new, state-of-the-art, not malfunctioning at all. Well, at least I'll always have my white void and elevator music to fall back on. As always, thank you for watching and be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below.